Welcome to our urban geography unit, our unit 4. So this unit will be focused on cities. So we're going to focus on the geography of cities. We're going to focus on cities across the world. We're going to talk about how cities came into being. And then we're also going to talk about challenges and segregation in cities and how that influences the cities and how some of the historical processes have influenced cities today. So to start us out, this lesson will be a relatively short lesson, just to start thinking a little bit about definitions as well as the development of cities. And so I'm going to go through some definitions. If you see it is yellow, I would suggest you write it down and just make note of it. This presentation will also be available to you on Schoology. So the first of all, let's just define what a city is. So a city is a conglomeration of people and buildings clustered together to serve as center of politics, culture, and economics. And when we talk about cities, the key difference between cities and just maybe like a town or a village is that the focus of cities is on business, it's on industry or manufacturing, it's not on farming. And so our next unit, we'll talk a little bit about farming and we'll talk a little bit about agricultural geography. But the purpose of a city is not to provide, the agriculture or the food for people. But in order for cities to be settled, we needed enough food to have a surplus and to have extra food to be able to feed people living in cities. So the urban areas are anything that includes a city, but also the buildup of that city and the suburban realm. So your last lesson for this week will focus on suburbanization in the United States. This concept that we have like the main city. So like in the United States or in our area, our main city is like Minneapolis or St. Paul. But we live in the suburb, right? We live in Burnsville, we live in Eagan or Savage. And all of those are on the outskirts of the city, but that's still part of the urban area. So when we talk about urban areas, it's the buildup of the city, it's the central city, as well as the suburbs that work around it. And then our worldwide trend has been away from country areas or rural areas. So rural means countryside or agricultural areas, and towards urban areas. Many people have migrated over the past 100, 200 years from rural areas to urban areas. And in 2007, we hit an important mark. We hit 50% of the world today live in cities. And that's the first time in human history that has ever occurred. China has had a fascinating revolution in terms of rural to urban migration. And today, China hit their 50% mark, where more people now live in cities in China than in rural areas in 2010, so slightly after the world hit their mark. But in the year 2000, only 36% of the people living in China lived in cities. And they've had massive migration out of rural China into cities in China. So it says to complete an Edpuzzle. You're not going to complete an Edpuzzle, but your assignment for today is going to be to watch this video, and then you're going to have a discussion post that goes with it. So I'm going to skip forward a little bit, but this is going to be where you're going to be asked to do. So this is the assignment. Pause, skip forward. Okay. So when we take a look at where different parts of the world are really urbanized versus not urbanized, we can take a look at a map that looks like this. So the countries that are in dark red are the areas of the world that have really high urban populations, and cities, and then the pink areas also have pretty high, so 70 to 89% of their populations live in cities. That means the other like 10 to 30% of the people live in countryside areas. In the orange colors, or in the light orange colors, so India, for example, and many of the countries in Middle Africa, we're going to find much less people living in cities. So it's going to be a lot more countryside, much more rural populations. And one pattern that we'll notice on this map is that in wealthier regions of the world, core regions of the world, we're going to find higher levels of urbanization. And then in less developed regions of the world, we're going to find lower levels of urbanization. And that would actually correlate pretty well with our demographic transition model. If you remember back to the demographic transition model, one of the reasons that countries still have really high birth rates is because a lot of people live in rural areas. A lot of people are still farming. You need a lot of helping hands on the farm. And as people move to cities, birth rates actually come down. And so the countries that have high urban or high rural populations, high countryside populations, are probably stage 2 or maybe even slightly stage 3 of the demographic transition model, whereas the countries that have much higher urban populations are going to be probably stage 3, 4, or even 5. So you can see, for example, Japan, which was a stage 5 country, they have a very, very urban population. Most people living in Japan live in a city. So when we take a look at level of urbanization, or that percentage of people living in an urban area, that's what's known as the level of urbanization. Okay, so that's what we were just taking a look at. And then we also talk a little bit about the rate of urban growth. And you're going to see this in your second lesson where we talk about megacities. So the rate of urban growth is the percentage increase in an urban population. So when countries are growing, okay, the rate of urban growth is that increase in urban population. So how fast is a country getting urbanized? And we talk about urbanization as that process of people moving away from rural areas to urban areas. And so just to kind of take a look at urbanization over time, in 1900, about 13% of people, only 13% of people lived in an urban area. By 1950, that had more than doubled. Today, we have more than 50%. And we expect that 70% of people worldwide will live in an urban area by 2050. Today, about 75% of people in more developed regions of the world live in urban areas, and only 45% in less developed regions of the world. But our fastest growing cities, or fastest urbanizing areas, are in less developed countries. So countries that have lower levels of urbanization, but are fastly we'll see the fastest growing cities. Okay, so I'm going to stop. Okay, so I said I was going to stop there, and I didn't mean to stop the actual recording. So I'm going to go back. So that was kind of the content for this first lesson. But now moving forward, you're going to go to the, let's see here, week 6 folder. You're in the Intro to Urban Geography. So now you're going to watch this video. You're going to then go to the Urbanization and the Future of Cities discussion post. I'm going to change this so it doesn't say complete by Friday night. And with this, you are going to watch the video that you saw. There's also a link to the video if that is hard, if you're having a hard time. But you are going to answer the 6 questions related to the video. So how did the invention of agriculture lead to the first permanent settlements? Compare the population densities of some urban cities to the large cities today, and so on and so forth. And then what is one question that you have about the history or the future of cities? All right, so that is your work. That's your work for today. So here's your video. Here's your questions. You can post that, and that's that first lesson. All right, reach out to me if you have any questions.